The 2024 NBA MVP results are in, and it's, drumroll please, Nikola Jokic. Yay. Very exciting. Very exciting. Hello, everybody. Welcome to Awesome Rusty Bucket. Subscribe to the channel if you have not already, and drop a like on this video, or drop a like on this podcast and go subscribe to us over on Spotify if you have not yet. If you would prefer to enjoy this as an audio experience, this is not a game recap. We've been doing a lot of those recently, of course, with the playoffs, but we're here to just spit. We're here to just yap about basketball and specifically the 2024 MVP race. So let's quickly go over the results before anything else. Nikola Jokic got 79 first place votes and ended up getting 926 total points, which was a little less than 300 more than Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, who would get second place. Luka Doncic did not trail too far behind Shai with 566 total points, so basically they were the only legitimate three, and then Giannis and Jalen Brunson also got a decent amount of votes. Jason Tatum got the obligatory, he is Jason Tatum, and he is on the best team in the league, therefore he does get some votes, but no first place votes for him. I'm a little disappointed with these results. As the MVP has gone on, I felt more and more like it should be Luka Doncic's award, not just because I legitimately think that he has the best case for MVP this year, but also like, between him and Jokic, if it has to be one of them, which it really felt like that's what it came down to as this season came to a close, I would prefer it to be the guy who doesn't have one already and wants the award rather than someone who doesn't want the award and has had it twice already. Especially because I already know and knew that this would happen, especially given the current context of what the Denver Nuggets look like right now, that there would be some narratives to be had, and it would be a little bit annoying because, as is often the case in narratives surrounding Nikola Jokic, very rarely are these given out in good faith. There's definitely a very large sector of people who are determined to prove that he's not actually good. And the timing, of course, of him winning MVP, followed by being down 0-2 at home in round 2 of the playoffs after facing their first very good playoff team throughout their last championship run, while it's ultimately still a good championship run, especially because of how dominant they were going 16-4. It's also not the most impressive competition we've ever seen. I definitely feel as though the notion of like he played 3 play-in teams, the Nuggets played 3 play-in teams, like that's definitely very reductive. And like, come on, we all know that the Miami Heat and those Los Angeles Lakers were better teams than their play-in spot suggested. The Miami Heat made the finals for a reason, man. Like, the Boston Celtics probably would have lost to the Denver Nuggets too, and if they wouldn't have, well, then they should have beat the frickin' Miami Heat, because what are the Nuggets supposed to do about that? I really don't think there was any world where this team was not going to win that title last year, because they were just by far and away the better team. However, this year, competition in the Western Conference has dramatically improved. It really felt like a lot of teams last year were in a transitional phase between, you know, being mid or bad towards being much better this year. The Clippers were better. The Mavericks were better. I think the Suns were about the same record-wise. What else? The Timberwolves, duh. The Timberwolves, much better than they were last year. OKC, much better than they were last year. There were legitimately like 5 teams in the Western Conference that I think thought could come out of it. And Denver is suddenly not the very clear favorite pick there, because last year's playoffs, they lost 1 home game the entire time, and that was game 2 of the NBA Finals against the Miami Heat, where the Heat had an outlier shooting game. I think they shot over like 55% from 3 on very high volume. That was the only circumstance that would allow you to beat Denver on their home floor. Not only is this an extremely clutch team that is fueled well by their home crowd that's extremely enthusiastic, but they also have the very good advantage of the fact that it's the Mile High City. It is harder to breathe up there in that elevation, and they're far more used to that. So typically you would see their opponent be a little bit more gassed than they are late in the game, and they would take advantage of that. That hasn't mattered, though, in this Minnesota Timberwolves series. And it's not just that they're down, because that's already ludicrous enough. It's that they really made them look bad. Like, they embarrassed them. Game 2 was embarrassing. Now, part of me just wants to give all the credit in the world to Minnesota for that and not as much dog on the Nuggets for that, but maybe that's me being a little bit too fair to them. Either way, it's not a good look, and it probably means they're going to lose the series, because I feel like the odds of them just bouncing back and tying it on the opponent's home floor probably very minimal. And then, I think best case scenario, you're going into Game 5 with a 3-1 deficit, which, this team has made 2 3-1 comebacks in the same postseason before, so they definitely have the ability to do it. I just don't know if they have the ability to do it against this team, because the Minnesota Timberwolves have looked like the better team on both ends of the floor, which is very, very surprising. I was under the impression after that last postseason, while I definitely didn't think they had the greatest competition in the world, they did play some good defenses. Like the Miami Heat are a good defense. The Lakers that season were a good defense. This Minnesota Timberwolves team, good defense. Who was their first round matchup? Who did they play in the first round? No. It wasn't the Lakers. Who was the Nuggets' first round matchup? I don't think it was anybody important. You're looking at the current bracket, are you not? I'm talking about last year's playoff run, Rudy. Yeah. I can remember who they played in round 1 this year. That was recent enough. I think it was the Phoenix Suns. The Wolves were the first round. I guess the Phoenix Suns were the second round. Okay. The Phoenix Suns are not a good defense, so I'll give you that one. But otherwise, they played, I think all those teams, they probably weren't top 10 defenses in the regular season, but the Heat, you know how they operate. The Lakers also became a much better team as that season went along. They were a dramatically different team post-traded line. So I just don't think I think it's reductive to act like these teams were bad, but that offense looked unstoppable. However, they've never faced a defense like this, and I think a part of that is I don't know that many teams have ever faced a defense like this. I argued in the most recent video that performance defensively might have been the best that I have ever seen, just given the context of modern basketball being as unstoppable as it was. So much so that, especially with the Denver Nuggets, that I made the main channel video about why offense has gone too far, and then now we're seeing the pushback, and part of that is the league just changing its officiating to some degree, which I know was controversial for Game 2. I didn't really address that aspect of it, but I feel like even if multiple of the plays that the Timberwolves had were called for fouls, they still would have made Denver embarrassed. Overall, ugly. And the timing is very awkward. I said in the last video, it's reminiscent of 2007 Dirk Nowitzki. Not quite the same, because Nikola Jokic is, of course, following winning a championship, where Dirk, at that point, he had a loss in the 2006 finals after performing not all that well. My voice sounds weird. And then, after winning, I believe it was either 64 or 67 games, they would lose to the We Believe Warriors in round 1. And then Dirk would receive his MVP, which is very awkward timing indeed. Dirk had not proven himself to be a champion at that point, so it's not the same, but it's a similar vibe of, damn, this dude was handed the MVP in the most awkward time possible, because losing in the playoffs at this point was very much not the expectation for this team. And, I definitely thought that they would face more competition. This postseason run, there was no reason to believe that it would be as easy as it was for them last time. Didn't think they were going to replicate the level of dominance, that 16-4 record that they had the first time. Obviously, the bench unit is worse. I was hoping that Peyton Watson would be able to step up into that role, but it has not really happened. The Bruce Brown being gone thing has really affected them. They've had to not go deep in the rotation at all. They're playing Justin Holiday 20 minutes because he's the only guy off of the bench that can shoot a three-pointer. It's pretty desperate. It's pretty desperate, man. And of course, like I mentioned, Western Conference got a lot more talented. Teams got a lot better, but I didn't expect them to get punched in the mouth like this. I'll be real. I am pretty shocked by the first 2 games of this series. But given that timing, I already know the discussions that are happening, the invalidation of that championship run, the invalidation of Jokic's past MVPs on top of this one. The MVP is a regular season award. That is the primary function it serves, is to show how good of a regular season you had. And Nikola Jokic had one of the best regular seasons. Again, it should have been fucking Luka Doncic. But, if you had to give it to someone else, I probably would have given it to Jokic. Unfortunately, though, this is a bad thing. It's probably bad for him to have this MVP at this point because there's a lot of expectations that come with being a 3-time MVP. There are only 3 different players, I believe, who've done it, who are Bill Russell. Wait, no, that's not true. That's 3 straight. He didn't win 3 straight. He was 3 out of 4. There's been more than just 3. Fucking Kareem, Jordan, LeBron, Wilt, Russell. I might be missing somebody obvious in there. But yeah, there's a couple of different guys. But it's a short list. That means he's one of the most MVP winning players that there's ever been. And he has a championship that people don't respect that much. I will continue to defend that it's a decent championship run, but it's definitely not a convincing one. And many other people who felt good about the Denver Nuggets and ended up being right about them being a championship team that year, probably oversold the unbeatability of them. I can definitely see that. I also didn't expect the Aaron Gordon factor to be as big of a problem. I knew that was a factor. However, good God, is it more exploitable than I thought it was. Because teams tried to exploit that last year, and it ended up not really mattering. Either when there's the Lakers going, like putting Rui on Jokic and doing AD as the roamer, like they would still manage to time those backdoor cuts well, to where they were punishing anytime AD would rotate a little bit too hard, and because Rui was too small, Jokic could just float it over him before AD could even get there. So, like, that situation, it didn't really work in that case. So I was like, yeah, I don't really think it's ever going to work. It will be better than, what you would do just going one-on-one, and especially if you're going to be sticking to the corner for, like, no reason against Aaron Gordon. Like, yeah, leave a bad shooter wide open. That's a very fundamental strategy in basketball today. But Jesus, I didn't know you could literally break their entire offense with it. I didn't think it would be that potent. Turns out if you just add a bunch of length and size on top of that defensive strategy, it then becomes pretty freaking unbeatable because there's no other team in the league that would have the defensive personnel that can even make this happen. And that's probably where I'm ultimately arriving with this overall narrative against Nikola Jokic. Like, I do think like this team was designed to beat Denver. Now the series is not over. They could win the series still. Jokic could fucking dominate from this point, and that would certainly be great for him to do. But I have a feeling that there's going to be a lot of discourse about who the best player in the NBA actually is if he loses this series, and especially if they just straight up get swept. I still think he's the best player in the NBA, and I would be shocked if I thought differently. He would have to be really bad in the following games, really dejected, really just getting shut down. And given the fact that we've never seen Jokic really shut down until this point, Game 1 he still had 32, but it was an inefficient for him 32 with a lot of turnovers. And then in Game 2, I think he had 14 or 16 points, something like that. Not good for sure, but I imagine he'll be better from here on. I don't know, I just hope people somewhat argue in good faith here. I imagine there's going to be a lot of bullshit that comes along with it. It's not fun whenever something happens and I'm like, well, I have to argue with a bunch of narratives that are kind of in poor faith now, but it is what it is. Should have just given it to Luka though. Would have been better. I think all of us would have been more happy. I think Luka would have been happier. I think Jokic would have been happier. I think everybody would have been happier. This just would have been better all around. And we all kind of felt that way by the time the season's end, where it was like, oh, we're going with Jokic? I guess we're going with Jokic. Because, like, just the tide of the MVP race. I'm like, everybody's saying that this is what it is now, and I just don't understand it. I'm not saying Jokic shouldn't deserve it. Like, this is definitely not a highway robbery case. This is a very good MVP season. I just think there was a better season on the board. Only one. I think Jokic should have been second in that voting, but no, he's the one who gets the award, and a lot of ugly discourse on the horizon, I think. Also worth mentioning, Nikola Jokic said that Luka should win the award. Just for what that's worth. He didn't want the fucking thing. And that's another reason why I do ultimately feel a little bit bad for Denver and for Jokic, because Jokic didn't ask for this. It's just, and again, Denver ran into the perfect storm. All right, so I was planning on only talking about Nikola Jokic this time around. I've just got back from a trip, so I didn't expect to have a lot of time, but of course I have to talk about this Cavs-Celtics game. You're not going to get the typical recap that we've been doing lately, so apologies for that. This is going to be a more traditional, just me kind of yapping about the game. I still have some notes, so it should have some structure, but it's not going to quite be scripted at points like it often is. So first things first, I have to acknowledge for Boston, there was no Kristaps Porzingis, and of course he is their second best player, which is the take I have been riding with this entire season, and I feel like it only becomes more obvious every time something like this happens. Anytime he does not play, this team just looks fundamentally worse, specifically because of the rim pressure element that he brings to the table here. Well, obviously he's not like a driving threat necessarily. He definitely can be. It's specifically the pick and roll option that exists with him. There's really no more threatening roll man on this team. Previously, they had Robert Williams. Whenever he was healthy, he would be a great lob target and a great roll option, but otherwise, not really just some dominant in-the-paint scoring big man. Now, of course, Kristaps Porzingis likes his jumpers too, but it's a nice, healthy mix, whereas I think with Tatum, with Jaylen Brown, and the Celtics in general, they can be a little too jump shot happy. And this was an example of a game where the Celtics just had absolutely terrible shooting variance working against them, and they could not get easy offense otherwise. Really, the only thing that they were getting that was easy offense is Jason Tatum did a decent job drawing some fouls, as he did put pressure on the rim, but everybody else was not doing that. This is a very ugly Derek White game, and Derek White is typically pretty much the beacon of consistency. He is not someone that you generally have to worry about not showing up in a game, but he was very bad in this one. He shot 3 for 11 and had 10 points. Drew Holiday was even worse. He shot 2 for 7 with 4 points in general. He has been bad in this postseason, which is not good. I thought, and I think I had my take even, I think I picked Drew Holiday to be my playoff X Factor, and I said that I thought, more likely than not, his shooting, his overall offense would be fine given that he is now the 4th or 5th option, depending on the night on this team, whereas previously with his playoff struggles, he was the 3rd option with the Milwaukee Bucks. So, stands to reason, and then especially when he was the 2nd option when Chris Middleton was hurt in 2022, but it stands to reason that the less pressure from the defense, the more open opportunities, his shot selection would be better, his makes would be easier, but no, couple of bad shots in this one, didn't hit the open ones that he got. That's not good. But this, like I said, shooting variance game. In the first half, wasn't really about the three-point shooting. It was actually more about Evan Mobley. Evan Mobley ended up having a career high for the playoffs of 21 points. He also had 10 boards. He had 5 assists in the first half, and he had 2 blocks. He hit a three-pointer at the top of the key. He had some post moves. I think one was a hook over Al Horford, and the other was a fadeaway over Al Horford. Got a couple of dump-off passes and alley-oop from Donovan Mitchell. He got a mismatch with Jaylen Brown on him, and he hit a lefty hook over him on the post, and no help defense came whatsoever, which I thought was absurd. I guess they thought Jaylen could handle that, but given how well he was playing offensively, they probably should not have thought that. This is actually a very quiet first half for Donovan Mitchell, as he would only score 6 points, which if you told me in this series that he was only going to score 6 points and a half, I would tell you that, well, Boston's probably up pretty significantly in that case. But no, the game was tied at half, which already spelled a danger for Boston to be tied under those circumstances. But hey, you can pass it off as, look, Evan Mobley hit some shots that we didn't expect him to make. Next half will be fine, right? Well, then the shooting variance comes into play because Donovan Mitchell was much better in the second half. He went 8 for 13 from the field, 5 of those shots being three-pointers. Donovan Mitchell and Darius Garland in the third quarter, both of them hit 3 pull-up three-pointers. Mitchell also got a catch-and-shoot one, and he hit one at the very end of the buzzer. There was also one that Darius Garland got that I was shocked at how open it was because Derek White, of all people, had to blow a defensive assignment pretty massively because Isaac Okoro was the screener and he went with the roller rather than sticking with Darius, and Jason Tatum was supposed to handle the roller. There really wasn't any reason to switch. He just kind of passively did it and then gave one of the better shooters in the NBA a wide open look, which he of course made. I'm kind of shocked honestly at how bad of a Derek White game this was, because he really just does not play this bad almost ever. His consistency, he's one of the most consistent players on this Celtics roster, whereas I feel like especially their Jaylen Brown, the Jays, they can be very inconsistent. So it's nice to have Derek White's consistency. It's like nice to have Porzingis's, for the most part, consistency. He did have that 1-for-9 game in the one game that they lost at home against Miami in game 2, where they had another crazy shooting variance game. They went, in the third quarter, the Cavs would go 7 for 10 from 3, while Boston would go 0 for 5. Overall for the half, because the shooting continued into the fourth quarter, both teams took 18 threes. The Cavs made 10 of them. The Celtics made 2 of them. That's not a winning formula, to say the least. This is just kind of the problem that exists when you're such a jump shot heavy team. As the 3 ball was clearly not going in, they started to attack more and more from mid-range, but it's like, that's not going to help you either. At least a 3-pointer is worth the extra point, but you're still getting shots where all of your players are off, none of them are hitting their jumpers. What makes a mid-range shot any better? Because that's what they were doing more in the fourth quarter, and none of them were going in, whether it was Tatum or Jaylen. I think Derek White took one. It's just not pretty. I think that Kristaps just matters too much to the way that offense works, that not having him, it really just evolves into the worst of what the Celtics do. And I think Porzingis in many ways counteracted those issues, because as a very good post threat, as a pick and roll and a pick and pop option, it gives them versatility in their approach. It gives them multiple different options, whereas without him, it was very clear how much this team was just going to default to iso ball, default to just getting up as many 3-pointers as they absolutely could, and none of it was working. Last thing, I guess, to mention for the Cavs is also a very good Karis LeVert game. Two of Evan Mobley's assists in the first half were backdoor passes. I think one of them was kind of more of a lob, but the other one was like a bounce pass through traffic. Both of them got Karis an easy look. He hit a couple of pull-up middies, I think one over Horford at the free throw line, the other one I don't remember who it was over, but it was a really impressive fadeaway. And he also missed a 3-pointer, grabbed his own rebound, and followed it with a tough finish that maybe should have been an and one over Al Horford. Speaking of over Al Horford, the 3-point shooting variance that continued into the fourth was carried next by Max Strus, who would hit a pair of 3-pointers, both of them with a very strong contest from Al Horford. But honestly, it's not just that these teams hit their the Cavs hit the threes while the Celtics didn't, because the Celtics were getting lower quality threes, where the Cavs, while they didn't score that many points in the paint in this second half, they were doing that more in the first with Evan Mobley being really dominant. They were attacking the rim. They were trying to get there to then set up a 3-pointer. But if you're not going to make the defense collapse and you're just going to pass it to someone who's kind of open but not really, and that's the shot you're getting every time, it's just not good offense. And they need that rim pressure. It's the thing that always scares me about the Celtics, because they have so much talent and they're so good at everything except for that one thing. They can be pretty good at it when Jason Tatum is aggressive. JB and Tatum both shot 7 for 17, but Tatum did get to the line. I think he got 9 free throw attempts, so he scored some more points than Jaylen did. But other than that and Kristaps Porzingis, there's very little rim pressure with this team, and it might be their undoing. Now, am I concerned about them with the Cavs going forward? Not really. Not unless Jared Allen comes back and Evan Mobley continues to be really good and continues to hit 3-pointers, because he went 1 for 2 in this one. If that were to happen, maybe there would be a little bit more cause for concern. I don't know what the timetable of Porzingis coming back, so that's also a factor. I think if Porzingis came back, this series would be over a lot quicker than it's going to be otherwise. But yeah, this isn't great for Boston. At the very least, you want to close out this series quickly so you have good rest before you go to the conference finals, where you're probably going to be facing a Knicks team that is going to be very, very physical with you. and definitely going to be much more of a battle than either of these rounds, or at least what this round should be. But yeah, I'm not concerned about the Celtics. Same way I felt about game 2 with Miami. It's kind of just like, come on guys, you shouldn't really let this kind of shit happen. But ultimately it's pretty obvious who the better team is here. The fact that it becomes extremely noteworthy when they do lose a game does indicate how much more favored they clearly are. Yeah, I just wish they got to the basket better. Really, that's the fundamental issue with this team, especially in the clutch. Especially in the clutch, they don't get to the basket. They just go to these contested jumpers. It's just not good offense. The Cavs were generating good offense and the Celtics were not. That was ultimately the deciding factor here. But yeah, that's it. Shout out to Rudy for editing this video. Check this show out on Spotify. It'll be on other audio platforms soon. Shout out to Rudy for editing this video, and goodbye.